Of this morning's announcement that the federal government has identified and taken action against a Russian cyber criminal. This is over the 2022 Medibank hack. It was described by the minister as one of the most devastating hacks in Australia's history. Let's go live to Olivia Casely now in Canberra. Olivia, strong words of warning this morning from three senior ministers.
That's right, Laura. So Russian citizen Alexander Ermakov, he's been named as the hacker behind that enormous Medibank cyber attack in 2022. We'll remember that the personal details, including private health information, were stolen from nearly 10 million customers. Some records were even published on the dark web. So we saw these three very senior ministers standing up this morning to explain that these sanctions, Magnitsky-style sanctions, which include a travel ban and also a financial sanction as well, has been slapped on this individual. Here's Foreign Minister Penny Wong making that announcement this morning.
This morning I can announce that Australia has used cyber sanctions powers for the very first time on a Russian individual for his role in the breach of the Medibank private network. I can confirm that thanks to the hard work of the Australian Signals Directorate and the AFP, we have linked Russian citizen and cyber criminal Alexander Ermakov to the attack.
Now, Laura, the Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Paterson actually called for these measures to be implemented a couple of months ago in November. His counterpart, the Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill, this morning spooked the fact that this was the first time that they had been used in this way.
This is a very important day for cybersecurity in our country. This is the first time an Australian government has identified a cyber criminal and imposed cyber sanctions of this kind, and it will not be the last. Medibank, in my view, was the single most devastating cyber attack that we have experienced as a nation.
At the tail end of that press conference, the Foreign Minister Penny Wong also revealed that they've slapped further sanctions on Hamas in response to their terror activity in the Middle East. She said that she'd get to questions on that issue later, but didn't quite get to it. So I'm going to read you the statement now that she has released. She says, Australia has imposed further counter-terrorism financing sanctions on 12 persons and 3 entities linked to Hamas, Hezbollah and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. This action is concurrent with further sanctions imposed on Hamas-linked targets by the US, UK and EU, and they include Hamas leaders, financial facilitators and persons who have provided training to terrorist operatives. So a ramping up of their response there. We still haven't heard from the Home Affairs Minister when it comes to the listing or designation of October 7 as a terrorist attack. The coalition was calling for that to happen last week. Laura?
Interesting, Liv. Thanks so much for that. Let's go live to the Shadow Cybersecurity Minister now, James Paterson. James, a big announcement this morning from 3 ministers. Do you welcome this announcement? It seems like a pretty unprecedented move, to be honest.
We certainly do, Laura. It is welcome that the Magnitsky cyber sanctions component that was legislated by the Parliament in December 2021 has finally been used. But what the Albanese government has not explained today is what has taken them so long. It was in November 2022 that I first called on the government to use these powers in relation to the Russian-backed hackers who attacked Medibank, because the Australian Federal Police had already publicly attributed it to Russian hackers. In December that year, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade acknowledged that they'd provided advice to the minister to do these sanctions. And in May 2023, the Australian Signals Directorate admitted that they'd provided technical assistance for an attribution for this to happen. So what's taken so long? I mean, with this government on national security,
is it the government dragging its feet, though, or is it our national security agencies needing to take this long to be diligent?
Well, from what we have available on the public record, it's very clear that the national security agencies provided that advice in a timely way. The AFP provided the advice by November 2022. DFAT provided the advice by December 2022. ASD provided it by May 2023 at the latest. That was the time that they publicly acknowledged it. It might have been much earlier. So what have the ministers been doing since then? Why have they been waiting? What has taken them so long? No explanation was offered for that today. And all we can see is that, yet again, the Albanese government has been slow on a matter of national security, as they often are.
But what is exposed today? Is it essentially, yes, this is great work by our security agencies and working with our allies and partners in able to name this Russian hacker. But doesn't it also underscore the point that there's very little our government or even the US government can do to bring someone like Alexander to account?
Well, Laura, the Minister for Home Affairs and Cybersecurity very modestly said that her own appointment as a cabinet minister with these responsibilities was a game changer. I'm not sure that the Australian people have benefited and noticed the benefit of that game-changing appointment because these cyber attacks are still happening, whether it's Optus or Medibank or Latitude or many others. The reality is this is a very hard task and we have to be honest and humble with the Australian people about what we can do. Cyber sanctions are important, though, because what we're trying to do is shape international norms. We're trying to put a cost on this behaviour. We should be doing that with offensive cyber operations against these gangs, and we should be doing it by sanctioning not just these gangs, but the governments which harbour them. The Russian government knows that this activity takes place on its soil. What effect would that have
in all reality, James? I mean, if you sanction the Russian government, what's Putin going to do? Is he going to care? Is he going to instruct these hackers not to target Medibank and Optus and the like?
Laura, this is a challenging issue. We cannot just click our fingers and make this go away. Cyber criminals make a lot of money out of this and they're very determined, and some governments are happy for it to happen on their soil. All we can do is reduce the likelihood that it happens again to our citizens, and cyber sanctions are one way of doing it. It's particularly powerful if we do it in concert with our allies. If countries around the world who are like-minded help shape these norms by putting a cost on this behaviour. Now, it won't guarantee that it stops, but it does make it less likely than if we do nothing. So it is welcome that the government has finally acted, but it's not clear why it's taken so long.
Indeed. One final question, and Claire O'Neill suggested that when Labor came to office, the government was ill-equipped to deal with the hacking that we have seen on the scale when it comes to these corporations in particular. Do you concede this morning that your government, the previous government, should have done more? I remember a couple of budgets ago, there was $10 billion put towards cyber security over the next decade. Was that money not well spent or not spent at all?
All the tools that Claire O'Neill and the government have used on cybersecurity are tools that the previous government put in place. The Magnitsky cyber sanctions we've legislated. The Red Spice funding that we gave ASD is what's given them the resources to do operations like this. Even the much vaunted Hack the Hackers program, which the Minister claims credit for, was actually put in place under the previous government. The head of the Cybersecurity Centre, who was standing next to her at the press conference today, was not only appointed by the previous government, that whole entity was created by the previous government. So the entire framework that the minister is using, she's relying on the previous government to do. Now, this is an evolving threat. We have to keep up pace with it. There are more things that we have to do, but the previous government did everything it could, and this government has been the beneficiary of that.
I don't have the ability to fact-check all of those things, James, but I will take your word for it and follow up with you later if I've got anything to quibble over. Thanks so much for your time, as always.
Thanks, Laura.
Well, let's get to the politics of the